and good evening. So this is Ariel, and for today's session, we will talk about the ETF project. And at the very beginning, I would like to introduce Ms. Deja Crystal. She was our Kingman and Taipei ETA before, and she got her master's degree in Taiwan National Jiao Tong University. And now she's our second year advisor. Let's welcome her.
Okay, so hi everyone, good morning. I hope you're doing well. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. So this morning I'm going to be sharing the ETF projects with you all. Some of you may have done this before. If this is your second year as an ETF, it will look a little bit different this year. But if you have not done it before, I hope that this session today will give you a lot of insight into what it is and what will be expected of you. So let's go ahead and get started. What is it? So as per your grants as an ETF, all ETFs are required to complete one project during the course of their grant year. So you actually have the entire grant year to complete this. You'll have the option to do this project in groups of 1 to 3 people of your choosing, and it's not limited to the same site. I'll go into more details later about the specifics, but as you're listening to this opening introduction, you can start to think about maybe what group you might like to work with. Again, knowing that you could work with someone maybe you know from a previous site or so on, because you don't have to stay within your same site. So anyways, I hope that this information session will provide you with more details about the project. So I want to briefly mention the purpose behind this project. As you're all ETFs, we're hoping that you can further your professional development and also help to support your fellow grantees or your community with insight into language instruction or community service. So those are two kind of key points of this project. We're hoping that you can do this project to in some way help with language instruction or English development of maybe your students, people in your community, or so on, or also something maybe along lines of community service. Because as ETFs, you don't have a community service requirement, but you do have this project, which could be like a community service thing that you've done in the past. So I want to start by giving you some examples of what this could look like for this project, but know that there's not one set thing that you have to do. We want this to be more open-ended. Last year, we had everyone create English videos that were used as classroom tools. This year, we're kind of opening it up even more. We want it to be more broad, but we'd still like the project that you do to be based around English education or community service or a mixture of the two of those things. So here are some examples. I'll run through some of them, but know that you can use your imagination. Think about things that you're interested in, maybe things you have experience in, and then propose them to us, and we'll work with you to come up with some kind of project that will hopefully be exciting and interesting for everyone, for you who's doing it, and also for the people that you're doing it with or reaching out to. So for English education, the first example would be to come up with some kind of language instruction video. This could be maybe a teaching video where you're introducing some maybe content using a sentence pattern, vocabulary, or so on. You could also do some kind of storybook reading or maybe a play or some kind of presentation in the video. And then the second part of that is distribution and promotion. So if you do come up with some kind of video, some kind of language tool, who will you share it with? How will it be used? How might you promote it after you've created it? The second option is to create an English storybook. I have digital here because we're not sure if we could actually get them printed or not, but coming up with a digital English storybook, and again, maybe just distributing it, so maybe giving it to schools that you worked with, maybe giving it to a cohort of ETAs or so on, and how you would promote it or maybe use it in the classroom. Organizing an English event. So some of you know as ETFs that in the past we have the remote service camps, so English camps that are held in remote places around Taiwan. This year it'll be voluntary if you'd like to sign up to be a leader for it. If you would like to volunteer to sign up to be a leader for a remote service camp and you take the lead on organizing that camp, maybe in a small group of ETFs, you lead the group of ETAs in doing that remote service camp, that could actually act as this project. You wouldn't need to do anything else. That could be your project. You're kind of being the facilitator for that English camp. If you also wanted to maybe come up with your own maybe half day or full day English event, maybe you want to do a English event for maybe some holiday at the local English village or something like that, you could also think about doing that as well as this project. But again, some of these more event organizing ones would need to have confirmation from your coordinator about whether or not there's a space available for you to do that, and so on. And that'll be part of the project design process. We'll ask you to write a proposal, and in the proposal, if you'd like to, for example, use your site's English Village space to host maybe a half-day event for students in the community to learn about some kind of holiday or some festival or maybe some kind of cultural exchange event, you might need to, in your proposal, talk about how you'll get that space, who you might need to talk to, whether or not that space is available, and so on. Another one that I want to mention about English education is actually an ETF-led workshop for ETAs. So as ETFs, you may or may not have several years of experience. And as such, you probably have a lot of your own ideas or things that have worked well in your classroom. And you might think, oh, is our group of ETFs in our site, we have a bunch of really fun games that we've done that we'd love to share with the new cohort of ETAs. So you could actually make your own 2-hour workshop where you share a bunch of the games or activities that you've done that have been successful in your classroom. And then you could actually organize a workshop one Wednesday afternoon when you don't have a semester workshop scheduled, or Friday afternoon or Monday afternoon, whichever your workshop times are for your site. And you could actually schedule one, and the ETAs in your cohort could go there and listen to your workshop that you create. So these are just some examples, but we encourage you to be creative, to think about something you're interested in if you want to do something more about English education. Then there's also the community service aspect. If you want, your project could be something like maybe organizing a beach cleanup. There's a lot of beach cleanups that happen around Taiwan. You could organize your own. This could be something that you invite ETAs to join in. This would be their community service, and your project would be organizing it, and you're all going to do it together. Some other things might be a talent show or some kind of event, maybe at a hospital or a group home or another organization. You could also organize a receipt drive for an organization if you'd like as well. People have organized receipt drives in the past. But part of this being a project that you're kind of organizing yourself or in your group of ETFs is that if you choose to do something like a receipt drive, you would also, in your proposal, you'd have to be responsible for figuring out, okay, how am I going to collect the receipts? How am I going to get these receipts? Maybe I'm going to set up a stand outside of this place and collect receipts, or go somewhere and collect receipts. You'll have to think about how you're going to do this instead of just maybe asking other people to give you their receipts when you see them at Fulbright events or so on. So really thinking about this as a project you're taking on and how you'd organize that. The two other examples here are organizing an English corner at the library. This could be for young kids or adults, or whatever demographic you'd like to work with. Could also do something like organizing an English resume writing workshop for members of the community. I think we have a few EMI ETFs who are also in this meeting right now. If you're already based in a university, this is something you could do at the university, so organizing some kind of writing workshop for students there or so on. So these are just some examples to get you to start thinking about this project and what it could look like for you. We are open to hearing all of your ideas for this project, but we need to approve your idea before you start working on it. So as such, each group will be required to submit one project proposal by the end of the summer orientation. So you'll have this whole month to work on this project proposal. It's a fairly short document. It's only about a little bit more than a page. And you won't actually have to complete your project until the end of May of next year. But we hope that you can come up with some kind of idea for your project during this next month. And in a moment, I'll go over what the proposal looks like. I'll also go over some examples, and I'll also go over a timeline, and I'll show you which times have been set aside for you to work on this specifically. And one thing I'll mention a little bit later too is any of the ideas that you come up with now, if later down the road you decide you want to change them, that's completely okay. We hope this is something that you can start to think about now, come up with a proposal. But if you come up with a different idea, maybe say in November, you go to the Thanksgiving event, you hear about a bunch of really interesting things that other ETAs or ETFs are doing in other counties, and you really want to try that as well, you can change your proposal later if you'd like. And I'll go into that in more detail in a moment. So the reason why we're having you submit a proposal is because we want to evaluate whether or not it fits into one of the two themes for this project. So is it focused on English education or on community service or on a mix of those two things? Whether or not it fits the criteria for a year-long project in length. So because we're asking this for everyone, it's not something where if you're going to do a beach cleanup, you just say, oh, okay, I'm going to go to the beach with a trash bag and I'll pick up a few things and that counts. The idea is that this is a project that you're working on and it has a little bit more organization and effort put into it. Again, kind of going back to that professional development aspect of really taking on this organizational kind of role if you're going that route, or if you're creating something maybe as an English resource, kind of different skills you'd be working on for that. And then the last thing, probably the most important thing that we'll look at when we look at your proposal is whether or not it's feasible. Now, this might be in terms of funding or logistics. And so when you submit your proposal, advisors will look over it and we'll try and give some feedback and assess whether or not this is going to be something that'll really work this year in terms of maybe funding or logistics and so on. So here's a few frequently asked questions, things you might be curious about. The first one is, can I work alone? Yes, if you'd like to work alone, you definitely can. Our kind of expected group is 1 to 3 people, and we expect that however many people you choose, 1 to 3 people, you're still kind of coming up with the same level of project. So if you choose to work by yourself, we'll still have the same expectations for you. But you can if you would like to. We won't say you can't. And every year people always ask if they can work in groups of 4. So if you do want to work in a group of 4, that is okay. You are welcome to work in a group of 4. But if you do work in a group of 4, we kind of expect, because you have 1 extra person, that your proposal, your project, whatever you choose to do, might be a little bit more elaborate or a little bit more detailed, or maybe a little bit more just a little bit bigger than maybe some of the other groups that only have 2 or 3 people, because you have 4 people working on it. And that's, again, just something for you to keep in mind if you choose to work in a group of 4. Another thing is, can I work with ETFs in another site? So yes, if you would like to work with ETFs in another site, you are more than welcome to. However, it will be your responsibility to organize any travel between sites if your project requires you to be in the same place as your teammates. So for example, if you're organizing a workshop to give to ETAs and you have one ETF in Penghu, another ETF in Kinmen, and you want the workshop to be held in Kinmen, we won't reimburse your travel for the ETF in Penghu to get to Kinmen to help lead the workshop. So if you choose to work cross-site, you'll be responsible for your travel if you need to travel. But if you're doing a project that's all digital, you're creating a digital storybook, you're promoting it digitally, or you're promoting it in 2 different sites so you don't have to be in the same place at once, then that would be something a lot maybe more simple and more feasible to do cross-site. As I mentioned before, can we change our project idea later? Yes, you are welcome to change your project idea later. However, if you change your project idea, we ask that you resubmit a new proposal before you start working on your new idea. And we will not accept any project changes after the end of the first semester. So when we come back for second semester after winter break, we won't accept any more changes. We will use your most up-to-date project proposal that you had submitted before the end of the first semester. And the last one is about funding. Can we get any funding for our project? So we currently don't have a budget for these projects, but we encourage you in the proposal, there's a place to list expenses that you might need covered. And what we'll do is we'll look and evaluate in terms of necessity, things that you might really need or so on. We'll look to see if they can be borrowed from other places. We also encourage you, if you're doing a workshop and you want markers and paper for your workshop, please talk to your coordinator and see what's available at your sites already before you go and purchase those things. So that's what I mean in terms of necessity. What things can you find for your workshop that could be borrowed before you go out and buy? And also, if you do purchase anything before you have approval from us for reimbursement, it'll be at your own expense. So if you purchase something first and we haven't approved it to be reimbursed, that would be kind of at your own expense if it doesn't end up getting approved. So just wait for that approval if you do have something like that. So here's the rough timeline. You have from now, this is August 3rd until August 31st to decide your teams and write your initial proposal. You do have some time in this month-long schedule that you could be working on this proposal. There's a few different things that might not be relevant to you, like school visits. If you already have a school, or maybe team building or coordinator time, talk to your coordinators. But if things are not relevant to you as an ETF, you could use this time to maybe meet with your teammates to work on this proposal. Again, that's kind of it'll change for each person's situation. Some people do need to go to school visits, others don't. So talk to your coordinators, but any time that is not relevant to you, you could use to work on this project proposal. We hope that you can finalize your groups before the 24th, because the 24th and the 25th, those are 2 full days that are completely free and dedicated for working on this proposal. So those 2 days are the 2 days that the ETAs will be attending the joint site orientation before you all go for the one after that. So those 2 full days you can actually spend working with your team virtually or in person, depending on if you're at the same site and out of quarantine or not, on this project proposal. And then by the 31st, we hope you can upload it to the drive. I'll give you all these links in a moment. And then during the month of September, we will appoint one advisor to your team, and they'll be in contact with you during the month of September. They'll give some feedback. They might request clarification or maybe revisions, and then they'll give you a final approval and you can get started on your project. After you complete your project, we'll ask you to submit a project reflection, and we'll give more information about this later. But the project reflection will just include maybe some photos of the event, if you did the event, and a brief summary by your teammates about how you think this event went, and so on. It'll be a very short kind of like proof of completion paper that, not paper, but like form that we will give to you later. And the deadline is by May 31st, so the end of May. So you do have the whole year to work on this. So now it's finally time to look over some of these important links. So we do have a Google Drive that has been made for this, and I'll send you all of these links in a moment, but I want to share my screen first so you know what it looks like. So this is the Google Drive. You'll notice there's a few different things in here. You have the place here for proposal uploads. This is where you'll upload your proposals once you're done. We have the PowerPoint that I just finished sharing right here, which you have viewer access to. So you can go in, look over the PowerPoint. In case I went through any information too fast or you want to review it, you can go and check this out. We also have right here ETF project Q&A. So any questions that you have about this project, you can go into this document and type them, and we will respond to you and answer any of your questions. So just like we've done in the past, any questions you have, please type them here. And then we have the ETF proposal template and proposal examples. So I'm going to look over some examples first. I want to share these with you. So here are the examples, just to give you an idea of what this proposal will look like. So this is example 1, project name, Phonics Game Workshop for ETAs. And our fake team members are Kevi, Chris, and Deja. So here are the project goals. Again, it's a very brief summary. You don't have to write too much. Just tell us what you're expecting from this project. Here I wrote, the 3 of us worked with 1st and 2nd grade students last year, and we have a bunch of phonics games that we played with our students that we'd like to share with the new ETAs. We noticed that the 1st and 2nd semester workshop schedules do not have any workshops on phonics, so we think it would be really beneficial for our cohort of ETAs. So you notice there was this thing that might be really interesting for ETAs, so you decide you want to get together and actually create a workshop and share your knowledge with them. So the next part here is the kind of objectives and timeline, keeping in mind that the final project must be done before May 31st. So maybe the first objective you have is to brainstorm the workshop content and coordinate the time for the workshop. And you give yourselves the first 2 months of the semester to do this. So telling us what you plan to do. Maybe you plan to meet several times online or in person to brainstorm ideas, organize them in a PPT. We also plan to communicate with coordinators and figure out what times are available to host our workshop. I briefly mentioned before, but if you are interested in this idea of doing an ETF-led workshop, you could use one of the, so if your site has workshops every Wednesday afternoon, you could use one of the Wednesday afternoons that does not already have a semester workshop, and ETAs we could invite them to come then, and they could be given that Fulbright leave to go to your workshop, and you could hold it during that time period. So there would be a space for you if you decide that's something you want to do. Then the next thing, your next objective might be to finalize the workshop content, giving yourself a month to finalize the PowerPoint. Maybe you have a lesson plan or PowerPoint itinerary, whatever you think you need, and to prepare and finalize materials. Then maybe, because this is your project that you're doing, you'll be responsible for promoting it. So maybe you type up a promotion email that you send out to the ETAs in your group. Maybe you type up a line chat that you send to your line group or so on. But that'll be something that you're responsible for. Also, just a note, if you are doing anything and you want, for example, to email the whole group of ETAs in all of Taiwan, that's not something that we can provide to you. We cannot give you everyone's email list. So if that's something that you need for your project, thinking about how you will get those kind of methods of communication. Who will you reach out to? How will you collect people's contact information if you need to connect with people for this project? Then maybe you host the workshop, again, because you don't know when your actual workshop would be. This is something kind of tentative, just in a rough idea that you could change later. So for example, we hope to host our workshop at the end of the first semester or beginning of the second semester, depending on like when there's time available. You don't have to give us an exact date because you don't know it yet, but you could tell us kind of your rough idea. Also, please note that if you are doing some kind of in-person event, like a workshop, like an English corner, like a beach pickup, whatever kind of in-person event that you're doing, if that's what your project is about, please make sure to take photos or have someone there to take photos kind of as proof that, hey, we did this, we completed this. And then the last thing after you host the workshop is workshop reflection and submission. So I mentioned this earlier, but we'll give you some kind of form to fill out where you would submit one kind of post-project reflection as your group to your advisor. And you'll submit it to the same advisor who worked with you in September for kind of approving the proposal. And this will just include kind of a brief summary of how the event went, maybe materials. If you used a PowerPoint, you might attach that. And then, of course, attaching the photos of the event as well. The next part on here is who the team members are and what tasks you did. Or what tasks you will like to assign each person to do. This can just be bullet points, and there's some overlap. Maybe we all worked on brainstorming together. Maybe it was Kevy's role to coordinate the time for the workshop with the coordinator. Maybe it was Chris's role to prepare relevant materials. Maybe it was my role to promote the workshop. Like, you can kind of mix things up. There might be things you have overlap, things you don't, and so on. And then you have the resources and budget here. This is one I just want to emphasize a little bit. This is a request. So please, again, try and think about what things you might need, what could be borrowed first. And if you want to borrow things from maybe the coordinator or the school or anything like that, double check. This will be something you'll need to confirm what materials are already available. Maybe you have things you need to be printed. Again, this is about double checking and asking where you can print things. If your coordinators have an office, is it okay to print in that office? Maybe FSC could help print. These are things you want to double check. And maybe if there's something you want to buy, like maybe you really want to get candy for a prize, roughly 80 NTD, you would write it here. And this is where when it's reviewed by your advisor, they'll check and see if these things are feasible or not, and whether or not we'd have the funding for that. And if there is funding for it and you are able to purchase it and get reimbursed, we will tell you later what that procedure will look like for applying for reimbursement and the different steps you'll need to go through. But again, wait for approval. Below here, there's the second one that I'm going to just kind of briefly go through, but I won't go into as much detail. The second example, a great example, is creating a digital storybook and an audio reading. So maybe the past year, you all worked in Penghu, and you really want to make a storybook about Penghu and the different types of special things you can do there. And you hope that this storybook could help kids on Penghu kind of relate to this and learn some useful English for talking about special things in their community. So what you plan to do is to start by brainstorming what kind of special features of Penghu you want to include, maybe identify what target language and the sentence pattern will appear in the book. You need to draft, edit, and revise the script for your book. Then maybe you're going to use PowerPoint or other kind of digital tools to illustrate the pages for your book. You might use real photos that you took in Penghu. Again, we won't reimburse your expense to fly to Penghu to take pictures for this book, but if you have your own photos, you could use that. And then maybe kind of as like an additional feature of this book, you also create maybe an audio book that goes with it, whether that's embedding your own audio voice, reading over each digital page of the book. So if it's in like a PPT, there's sort of the voice, like the voice icon. And as a teacher is presenting the storybook, they could click on it and the students could hear your voice reading the book. So something more interactive. Or you can make a video that kind of goes through the digital book and has your voice reading over it as well. And the idea that you would kind of set these things up, whether it's a PDF, PPT, video, whatever kind of the medium is for sharing this book, you'd have it kind of set up there and a way to distribute it. And then thinking about how you would distribute it. So maybe you would give it to your previous LETs. Maybe you'd share it with a current Penghu cohort, again, thinking about how you'll get in touch with them if you have connections to them. Maybe you also want to share it with the Ministry of Education. So how would you do that? And not just expecting the Penghu coordinators to share it for you, but thinking about how you could make that connection yourself and share it. And then, of course, submitting that kind of reflection. For this reflection, you wouldn't need to attach pictures because it wasn't like a singular event, but you would need to still kind of have a summary of how you think your book turned out and maybe a copy of the final project. Again, tasks assigned, and maybe for this type of activity, there's no budget that you would need requests for. So this is what the template looks like. You can see that there's all the places that I just went over. That would expect you to fill out. It's about 1 page. If you type some stuff, it kind of goes into about a page and a half, and you have the entire month of August to work on this. And yes, I think that is, oh, the last thing is here. You'll notice the ETF project grouping. So we'll let you choose your own groups, and we'll also let you report your own groups. So you'll notice this is the Excel file, and it has group number, just whatever number is available next after people have put it in. You can go in and type your group, type the person and the site that they're in. So if they're located in Penghu, Jinmen, Taipei, New Taipei, Kaohsiung, whatever site it is, type the site for each of the members of your group. And I did put 4 here with an asterisk because I mentioned you can do groups of 4 if you'd like, but just keeping in mind if we are doing a group of 4, how will we make our project a little bit bigger because we have that extra person in our team. And I recommended you fill this out before the 24th so that the 24th and 25th, you have those full 2 days to work on the project proposal. But the deadline for this grouping Excel sheet would technically be the 31st when you submit the project proposal, which would be uploaded just to this folder right here, which you should have access to. Oh, and the last thing is there's a template right here. Please save a copy to your own drive and then upload it here. So the template just kind of has that blank spaces for you to fill in. You only need to upload 1 per group. So 1 person can save it to their drive. You can all work on it and edit it together and then upload the final one here. Okay, I believe that is all of my sharing. So I'm going to stop sharing, and the links we can send to you. Ariel, do you have the links handy that you could send either in an email or in the chat?
Okay, so I will share the Google Slides link in the chat box. Give me a second. And I want to make a clarification because I saw there's 1 or 2 new names, which means you're ETA. That means you don't have to do this project, okay? So this project is for the ETF and EMI ETF, okay? Sorry, let me say again. This project is for EMI ETF and also some returning ETF, which includes the if you were ETA last year or you were ETF last year or you were like ETA alumni, okay? So if you're not returning ETF or you're not EMI ETF, you don't have to do this, okay? So I will share the link here. Wait me a second. Okay. So if you have questions, just like Deja mentioned about, you can type your question on the Google Doc and you will find all the links in this Google slide. Okay? So for now, if there is no question, we will end this session here. And from now to 10:30 to I think all the way to noon, you can discuss about this project. Okay? So see you in the afternoon. Bye bye.